This is our appraisal template for self-build and renovation projects. This template is available in Microsoft Excel as well as Google Sheets. Within the appraisal template, there are 4 sections, which you can see here. We have firstly the residual land value appraisal. We have the development profit appraisal. We have a section on collecting comparable evidence to help us identify what surrounding property values are worth and what you think your project will be worth when it's completed, as well as a section explaining all the data inputs that feed into the appraisal, as well as an email address here for support. To begin, I'm going to talk you through the first appraisal in this Excel template, which is the residual land value appraisal. For those of you who don't know, a residual land value is essentially the maximum price you can pay for land or a property and ensure the project remains financially worthwhile. And all of this is automatically calculated for you. You just need to put the inputs into this green box here, and it will automatically calculate the residual land value. Now, the residual land value is impacted by a number of factors. And what it is essentially you take your gross development value, which is what the project will be worth when it's finished. You then subtract all the costs, and you also subtract the profit you want to make. In this case, it is £110,000. So if you want to make sure you make £110,000, the most amount of money you can pay for the land is £168,000. So before I jump in and start changing the inputs here, I'm just going to explain when you should use a residual land value appraisal. So you should use a residual land value appraisal when there's no set price for a piece of land or property, or when you're asked to make an offer. It's a great way to work out a fair price without needing to guess, so you can make an informed decision. If you already know the asking price, we've built a development profit appraisal tool, which lets you easily assess the project's profitability with a fixed land price. So either way, you can do your appraisal, whether you don't know the land value or you do know the land value. Okay, so you want to calculate the residual land value for a property. So I'm now going to talk you through the appraisal. So as previously mentioned, you just edit things in this green box. And if you don't understand any of these inputs, they are fairly self-explanatory, but you can jump into the data inputs tab, which explains every single one of the inputs in a lot more depth. But for the sake of this appraisal, I'm going to run through it for you now. So proposed house in square foot. So for the sake of changing it in the appraisal, I'm going to put that to 2,000. We're going to assume it's going to be worth £4 to £5 a square foot when it's finished. And for calculating that, don't worry, because there is a comparable evidence tab that allows you to come to conclusions on values. So that gives us a gross development value of £850,000, which you can see is linked and updated here. We've then got site preparation and site services. I'm not going to change these for the sake of the appraisal, but for your appraisal, I recommend changing these and making it accurate to your project. So next we have our servicing and preparation time for the site. Now, if the site's a complete mess, the property's a complete mess, this is going to take longer. So this is the time to get the property prepared for the renovation or the site prepared for a self-build project. Next, we have the build cost on a price per square foot. So we'll change this for the appraisal to £200 a square foot. And this then automatically calculates your construction cost by timesing your build cost per square foot times the house size. So that gives us a total construction cost of £400,000. Now, moving on, we've got the landscaping. So here we've assumed 5% of construction costs. You can change this to your specific project. For the appraisal, I'll change it to 7.5%. Now, if that ever goes to 8%, it's not 8. It just means the decimals have moved. So we need to bring that back. There we go. It's actually 7.5%. So if that happens to you where it rounds it up, it's just a case of pressing one of those. So we'll leave it at 7.5. Next, we've got the construction period. So we've assumed 1.5 years or 18 months in this case, which is 1.5 years in the appraisal. And as it's linked to number, 1.5 years is 1 year, 12 months, plus half a year, 0.5, 6 months, and that adds up to 18 months. So just remember that that is linked to numbers, the construction period. Next, we have the interest rate. So this is, of course, the cost of borrowing for the project. I'm going to leave that at 5%, but you can adjust that as you feel necessary. It's worth noting that your interest rate is linked to your construction period and preparation time, so your overall timescales will be linked to your interest rate, and that is how it's calculated. Next, we have professional fees. Now, this covers costs such as surveys and architect costs. Now, if you're buying a plot without planning, this is going to be higher than if you buy one with planning, because it will cover the planning costs. And if you're buying a renovation project, this should be lower as well. So you can edit this to your specific project. Next, we have the developer's profit, which is currently at 15%, and this is calculated as a percentage of the gross development value, which is this number here. So you can see over here the developer's profit is currently 127,500. Now, if we want to change this to 20%, you can see that the developer's profit has gone up to £170,000. Now, this of course will have an impact on the residual land value. So if this is giving you a residual land value that's uncompetitive and you're not going to be able to purchase the land for that amount, you're going to have to reduce this. So if we go down to 15%, you'll see that that massively increases, and the money is basically just taken from the profit back onto the land value and vice versa. Then lastly, we have contingency and we have stamp duty land tax. Now, contingency is essentially just an extra reserve of money in case you run over budget, and it is essentially just 5% of the total construction costs you've got here. So you've got £21,000 of extra money within that in case you go over budget. Then lastly, we have stamp duty land tax. We have included a link here to the official government website for calculating that. Now, what I'll do is put 3,500 in here just for the sake of changing it. And then this gives us our final residual land value of £168,556. So I hope this video has been useful for you. And again, if you need help with any of the inputs, they are all explained in the data input section, as well as an email here for any questions and support. So now I'm going to talk you through the development profit appraisal. This is very similar to the residual land value appraisal we just looked at, except in this case, you already know what the land or property costs. So you could have already purchased the property and you can input that there. Or if you see something online, a property or piece of land you're looking at, you can put the guide price in here. And what it's going to calculate for us is how much profit we're going to make on this development site or renovation, as well as the profit as a percentage on GDV. Now, we're going to start by changing the inputs in this blue box here and work our way through this appraisal. So we're going to begin with changing the proposed house size. I'm going to go for a smaller house size in this one, and we're going to go 1,500 square foot for the size. We're going to assume a price per square foot of 450 when it's finished. Now, that's quite punchy. And that's going to give us a GDV of 675,000, which is going to update over here as everything's linked. So next we're going to come on to the land cost, and as I just explained, you want to input whether it's a guide price or whether you've already purchased the property. You can put the land cost in here. I'm going to leave the site preparation and site services the same. You need to edit these to your specific project, and for that you can have a look in the data inputs tab, which will explain that. We're going to leave the site preparation and servicing time the same, and we're then going to come in and change the build cost, and we're going to put this at 195 per square foot, which is going to bring our construction cost to £292,500. Next, we've got landscaping, which we're going to change to 7.5%. And again, we're going to bring that back. So it says 7.5%. It's not rounding it up. We're going to leave the construction period at 1.5 years, 18 months, as in the previous appraisal. And we're going to leave the interest rate at 5%. We're going to lower our professional fees on this one. We're going to assume it's more of a barn conversion or renovation project. So we'll put those at 2.5%. Let's bring that back to 2.5. And then we'll put our contingency up to 7.5 just for the sake of this appraisal. We'll come and do that as well. We'll change our stamp duty to 3,000. Now, I know we flicked through that fairly quickly, but as you'll have watched the residual land value appraisal, that all should make sense. The only difference is this time we're inputting the land value or property value manually, and it's then telling us how much profit we're going to make. Now, if the land value changes, so if we go to 150,000, then our profit's going to reduce. So the amount of money you pay for land is going to have a big impact on how much profit you're going to make. So it's really important to make sure you use a tool like this and figure it out before you go and buy the land. Now, if you have any questions about any of this appraisal, again, feel free to drop us an email, and please do use the data input section to make sure you put in inputs that are accurate and relevant to your project. So now we've run through that, we're now going to move to the comparable evidence tab, which is the last section I'm going to talk you through. So in here we have the comparable evidence section, and the use for this section is we want to arrive at an average price per square foot that we think our project or our development is going to be worth when it's finished. So for example, here on the comparable properties that are on the market, currently marketing, the average price is £311 per square foot for the comparable property that we looked at. And then down here, we've had some sold evidence. So these properties have all sold, and we can see that the average for the sold properties is £302 per square foot. Now, we've only put 4 properties in each one for now, but the more comparable evidence you have, the better, and it will allow you to arrive at more accurate price per square foot. It's also really important to note that the comparable evidence that you gather, so the properties, they need to be similar to what you are proposing to build. So for example, if you are going to be building a 4-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house, make sure you only select properties that are a similar size and have a similar number of beds. Also, they need to be in a similar location as well for it to really be accurate evidence. So those are key things. They have to be properties that are similar and comparable to the one that you are going to be selling when your development is finished. So we've written some text up here, which you should read. It's really helpful, and it will talk you through this in some more depth as well. So to begin, I'm going to add a new piece of comparable evidence. So I'm going to insert a new row here. And what I'm now going to do is go and look at properties on the market and find a similar property in a similar area, and then start filling in this information. So we are now on Rightmove, and I'm going to start looking for some comparable data. So we're going to stay in Devon, and I'm going to click for sale, and we're going to start searching for some comparable properties. You can filter it if you know how many beds your property is going to be. I'm just going to have a scroll through here and look for one that I think would be a good comparable property. So you want to look for something that's fairly new. So let's click on this one. Okay, so we can see this is a new property because it's got a CGI, which is a computer generated image, which means it's just been finished and they don't have a photo of the outside. So this is a good comparable. So we're going to look down here and look for our floor plan, which we can see. So we know the property is £515,000 and the area is 1,764 square foot. So we're going to input this into our comparable evidence table, and see what the price per square foot is. Okay, so we are back in our comparable evidence table now. So I'm just going to insert the property address here. It is a detached property. It has 4 bedrooms. The size in square meters is 163, and it will automatically calculate the conversion to square feet. The price is 515, and it automatically gives us our price per square foot there, and this is on the market. And then you can add a photo there as well. And that's really it. You just need to do that for a number of properties, 10 to 15, until you're comfortable on the price per square foot. And you do exactly the same for the sold comparable evidence table, except you use sold properties, which a link to is here. And when you're completed, you can look at the two values, pick somewhere in between, or if you want to be on the side of caution, you could go with the sold comparable section. But it is helpful to have an idea of what properties are currently marketing for, as well as what they have sold for. So that is it. There's more information up here when you purchase a spreadsheet. The more comparable evidence you have, the better, and the more confidence you can have in your assumptions. So get as many as you can, get comfortable with the price per square foot, and then you can use that to input into the rest of the appraisal. Thank you for watching this tutorial. We will leave a link to the spreadsheet as well as our email address below so you can get in touch with us for any questions. We wish you all the best with your next self-build or renovation project, and we hope the spreadsheet plays a part in you building your dream home or completing your next renovation project.